Ladies and gentlemen, no, but recording is good. So let's start with going back to 2003. It was a hot summer day in August. If you remember, that was when the SARS epidemic was going on, and my hometown, Toronto, was the western hotbed for this wonderful epidemic. So I just finished my first year at Cornell University in engineering, and I was out riding my bike on a hot summer day, and boom, I get hit by a car. Sideswiped by a nice old lady taking her grandchild to go to the store. Interestingly, she went to park right in front of a store that sells seeds to grow your own hemp at home. But fortunately, they knew the number for the authorities, so they could call the ambulance right away to get them to come and take me to the hospital, which was, among all the chaos and everything, I could get stitched up. And it would have been a normal, let's get home and get better. I had a big, gash on my arm, and my leg was all bandaged up. But I had just finished the first day of a 6-day rowing regatta that was the national championship that I had been training for the entire previous year for. So instead of going back home to a nice warm bed, I went back to stay in a tent in St. Catharines down by the rowing regatta. And even though I couldn't actually walk properly carrying the shell with my partner to the water, I could sit down and I could still put out most of the effort. And it was a heck of a 6 days of more racing, but we got through it and got to the finals. And going through the finals after all of the ups and downs, so that we were neck and neck going into the finish. We'd been leading the race the whole way. We ended up getting just pipped at the line, and we got second. And for me, there's no silver medals at this national championship. This particular one, it was sort of the trials for the national team. And it was the most frustrating experience of my life. But, so I put rowing to the side. That had been kind of my whole life for the last 5 years. And I put that aside and actually ended up, I went back to school, but I switched sports to cycling. So I got over my PTSD after the accident, and quickly changed and got into racing. We could have a little more freedom. But I went back to school. I went to Cornell as an engineer. Love engineering, but it always, the school part was sort of seemed artificial to me, so I always had another priority, whether it was sports or some science project or something like that. And so I went through school and had a bit of a interesting path where I took a couple years off, where I went to work in the Northern Alberta oil patch, had some physical experience in addition to the problem sets in engineering. And then I came back, and as I was graduating, it was 2008, I had done a master's degree, and it was between being Canadian and having some extra paperwork required with hiring foreigners you may or may not be familiar with, and the fact that I kind of never really wanted to work for anybody else anyway, I got a total of 0 job offers. So that was 2008, and I decided, well, I know something about solving problems, and I had to miss class all the time for fun and for sports. So I decided, hey, why don't I start a software company where I can record the videos of lectures and then make them online and then make them searchable for students, because this was something I wish existed back when I was a student. So I did that, and actually was frugal enough to make that pay the rent so I could focus on another passion of mine, which is investing. So I deal with all kinds of different companies. It's been something I've been in love with since I was a kid, reading Warren Buffett's letters and all that interesting stuff. And after we got the software company going, I managed to raise a little bit of money, and it was 2009 then, the world was falling apart and everybody else was paralyzed with fear, but for me that was something I get energy from that. I get bored very easily. It's my problem, not being paralyzed with fear. And so started investing in these very distressed companies, and then after a couple of years, there was a time when I was crossing the border coming back in. I was visiting my family in Toronto and came back into the US. And I had sort of fudged something with my visa. I had hired myself, which you're technically not allowed to do, but there's a bit of a disconnect between the courts and the enforcement of those rules. But anyway, they said, hey, you got to get a visa. So for that, you have to move back home. So I got kicked out of America for 4 months, and I had to leave all my social connections, everything in New York behind, in University of New York. But it turned out to be the best thing ever because it gave me an opportunity to move out to California, which I never, it would have been hard to do that anyway, but I moved out there, and within 4 days I met my wonderful wife, and we moved out. We ended up moving up here a year later. But that was my sort of easy way to make a big change, is to have somebody else cut the past for you. So I guess I would just end on my personal note of saying, anytime you get into a really challenging situation, just think, how much is that lowering your opportunity cost to go change something that maybe you felt like